Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and Lightning became one of my favourite Final Fantasy characters after she became a fashion icon. Welcome to today's Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, and today we're going to be looking at the new story chapter along with Vaan's burst and LD weapons and the brand new character that we're going to be getting in Gabranth. Now Gabranth is actually a really interesting character with just his EX, and Vaan is he's very strong as well for now, but there are some slight weaknesses in his kit that I will be going over. So if that's all stuff that you guys are interested in, then stay tuned and keep on watching. As always guys, don't forget to check out all of the social media links in the description box below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon. Twitch this week, I will obviously be covering the new story chapter as it releases, and hopefully we'll have some Abyss stuff to clear as well, which will give us some extra resources that are sorely needed, as well as celebrating the release of Crystal Chronicles. I should be doing a little bit of a stream for that, and of course we'll be doing some more FF14 on Sunday. With Patreon, I always shout out one of my patrons at random so that I can give thanks to each and every person who decides to support the channel further, and today that person is going to be Tyro. So thank you very much for your support. You've actually been a supporter for a little while and you've upgraded into a new tier, so here is your animated title card. Don't forget to check out all of the websites associated with Opera Omnia, as you can see all around me here and in the description box below, and of course don't forget to check out all of the other content creators out there besides myself. So first things first, let's take a quick look at Vaan and the things that he's going to be getting out of his LD and his burst. Now Vaan doesn't have a rework or anything this time around, but for those of you who've used Vaan for a long time, you'll know that the main thing with Vaan is that he hits with various different elements, which can work to his detriment, as I'll get to in a little while, but he also inflicts various debuffs like blind and attack down, defense down, things like that, small debuffs, while doing multi-hitting Brave HP attacks. And after you've used those Brave HP attacks, those skills multiple times, they become upgraded versions of themselves, and this combined with his EX in Pyroclasm are abilities that refund bravery after you've used them. So he's very good at keeping his bravery up pretty much at all times, so it's quite hard to break him. And this trend continues with his LD and his burst. Now his EX gives him his Flight of Freedom buff, which gives him bravery gen on top of everything. He also manages to sort of refund bravery after he uses it, after you've realised it, but Vaan's EX Plus actually came out quite a long time ago. His LD is a 8-hit, a Brave HP attack AoE with split damage, which isn't ideal at this point in time, but it does give him a brand new framed buff called Quickening Cartridge. Now what this does is, while he has this buff, which will last for 3 turns as long as you've maxed out the LD and given it all the power stones it needs, will give him free skill uses for the entire time that he has it. So you get basically 3 free skill uses out of each time you use the LD. So basically it means that you're going to be able to get to your plus versions of Red Spiral and White Whirl much easier than you would have done before, because you needed to have used them 5 times in order to get those plus versions. And Vaan's biggest issue before is that his HP plus was only okay, it wasn't great, and it's still not that great, but it does give him the ability to use all these things and not run out of longevity quite as easily as he did before. So getting that White Whirl plus, getting the Red Spiral plus, Pyroclasm plus, making sure all of your skills are refunding bravery every single time you do pretty much anything means it becomes very hard to break him. And it also means, like I said earlier, that he has a lot more longevity than he had before. So you get 3 uses out of that. You're going to get 5 skill uses if your 2 skills off much easier. You may only want to use the LD once you already have the plus versions of these skills. But then maybe using it once at the beginning so that you're able to sort of get to the plus versions as quickly as possible while still being able to maintain it. You're still going to have 2 skill uses left, so therefore you're going to be able to keep him going for much longer. His burst is a very simple 12-hit Brave HP attack, and the burst effect of this is that the character that's attacking's bravery will not drop below 20% of max bravery, even when using attacks. Now, this actually works relatively well with a lot of characters because it makes them much harder to break, but there are certain characters that use multiple Brave HP attacks in their kits. So for example, Gabranth is a good example of this. If you want to take it even further, you could look at Prompto or Sid, which is going to make them hit that much harder. Vaan's burst is nice, but it doesn't really add all that much to him because he already does that for himself in terms of refunding bravery. The main reason that you're going to want the burst is because you get an extra use of the LD, which makes him that much easier to use. And during the burst, if you have the LD, you can spam the same skill 3 times if you want to, just so that you're hitting with the correct element. The problem that Vaan has is a lack of Imperil. In this day and age, we have a lot of different elemental resistances, very like magic resistances, things like that, that can wall Vaan out outright. So if they resist any one of his skills, so Pyroclasm is fire, you've also, like, he's got so many different skills and abilities that have, you know, he's got wind uses in White Whirl, he's got holy magic, he's got ice magic, he's got all sorts of magic all over the place. So if any one of them gets resisted, it really hurts Vaan quite a lot. So if you can pair him up with someone with Imperil, Shantotto, for example, is a great example of this because Shantotto imperils everything. Alize not so much because you'll only actually benefit from her with White Whirl because she doesn't use Ice or Holy. So you're actually going to be wanting to make sure you pair up Vaan with somebody that can at least make sure that his kit works correctly. Because when it does, he actually does a lot of damage very quickly. You just have to be careful who you pair him up with. Now, Gabranth is a really interesting character. Gabranth combines various elements of different characters that we've already seen in the past through their mechanics. So he has a lot of framed debuffs, he works very, very well off of debuffing. He also has some really nice party auras and party offensive stat bonuses. He also, he has Rebreak in his kit in a similar way to how Vayne works. He also reduces bravery damage that you take. He has a lot of eggs in different baskets, and he does a lot with what he has, considering that he actually only has an EX in this particular banner. He does get an LD much later, which will reduce HP damage that the party takes, but he doesn't get that for quite a long time. So Circle of Judgment is a group AoE, a group bravery attack and single target HP attack that gives him the Judge Magister buff, which basically raises all your offensive stats for the party and also lowers the amount of bravery damage that the party takes. So looking at that as well, if you have his 15 and 35 CP weapons, obviously we always assume that you have the entire kit when it comes to building a character, then you'll see that you get plus 20% on all of the effects of Judge Magister, which means you're going to be taking 30% less bravery damage, which actually adds up quite a lot. And then he also inflicts attack down, defense down, Judge's Sentence, which is a framed max bravery down, and then Mark of Guilt, which also lowers their attack down again, and it also poisons them, and it becomes a stronger version of itself as long as the enemy has 4 or more debuffs on them. So bear in mind the Circle of Judgment already inflicts 4, so it does the attack down, defense down, Judge's Sentence, and Mark of Guilt, which then transforms into Felon's Imprint, which then does even stronger bravery damage poison-wise, lowers their attack even further, and increases the HP damage that they take as well. So this debuff is one of the main reasons you want to take Gabranth, because being able to inflict more damage, take significantly less damage, and also just have those debuffs walling out certain buffs is going to be really useful to you. Execution is a Brave HP attack AoE with splash damage, it goes up to 50%, but the actual thing that you want to come from that is in his 35 CP weapon, because as you can see here, it is a Rebreak style attack that also inflicts more splash damage. So Rebreak in his kit on top of all of these debuffs actually works really well. The buff from the C60 is just more skill uses, more damage, more bravery attacks, more brave overflow. The only things that he actually gets that he doesn't get now from his rework that he'll get when his LD eventually comes out is that he gets more skill uses of Circle of Judgment. He doesn't get as many as he would do if his LD was out. And here it says that the party's bravery is increased by damage dealt. That doesn't happen. That happens much later on when Gabranth's LD comes out. He gets a slight rework to improve his skills. But he also gets a bravery plus and an HP plus out of his C55, so as long as he has Judge Magister and the enemies are afflicted with Mark of Guilt or Felon's Imprint, he will be able to inflict the attack down and defense down just by using HP plus or Brave plus, or HP plus plus, which we'll get to with the EX weapon. This means that he's able to keep up Felon's Imprint as much as he can. They're not the strongest debuffs in the world, but attack and defense down on an HP plus is actually pretty solid. Then looking at his EX weapon, his EX attack quickening is on its own just a very hard-hitting multi-brave HP attack. So three brave HP attacks, so it goes 5 hits once you've given it a book and its ingots and everything. That deals splash damage on the final attack. So it'll deal 50% as long as the enemy is inflicted with Felon's Imprint. It's another one that also re-breaks, so not only does his skill 2 re-break, his EX does it as well, which is great. It also gives him Judge Magister, so you're able to keep Judge Magister pretty much permanently, and it's not the fastest recast rate, but it's good enough. I wish it were a little bit quicker, purely because of one of the only downsides that Gabranth has, in that nothing he does restores skill uses or makes free skill uses or anything like that. He will eventually run out of skills, and that can be a bit of a problem for him. However, once you put the ingots and everything into it, he hits really hard with this. Like 3 lots of 5-hit brave HPs with AoE damage, increasing bravery by like refunding some of the bravery back after you use the first and second HP attacks with 3 hits. It hits hard for just an EX attack without an LD. It really does. And then that 1 out of 3, max brave and attack by 40% is a lot to come from a weapon like this, so it does help. And then starting with Mark of Guilt and Judge's Sentence means that you can actually help him out quite a lot by just using an HP attack to begin with, because that means that you're able to just get the Felon's Imprint straight away. You don't have to use skill user to get it, and you're already getting these amazing debuffs and buffs off of that. I really like Gabranth. I think that he is a character that really brings a lot to the table, considering how little he costs resource-wise. He doesn't have a burst, he doesn't have an LD, he only has an EX. Similarly to how I sort of describe characters like Alize and later Leon and a couple of others, he is definitely somebody that is worth your slot for we're just having an EX. He's definitely what I would call an EX legend. Vaan is fine. He's not a bad character by any stretch of the word, but as of this point in Japan, he is considered to have the weakest of the bursts available. But all that it could take to change that is a decent LD board. We've seen this happen with Squall, because he was considered very weak for a long while, and then his LD board came out, and then bang, he was back on top of his game. The same thing could happen with Vaan. All they'd need to realistically do is add Imperils into his kit, and then that's going to do him absolute wonders. But for now, I think that Gabranth is somebody that you can go for with just EX tokens, and I don't think you necessarily have to pull for him. But let's go and talk about that on the actual should you pull portion of the banner. In terms of artifacts, honestly, these two are both very, very simple. Vaan doesn't have a particularly special C50 in his passive, so therefore you just want attack and max bravery. And then with Gabranth, he actually does have a really nice C50, which raises all of his stats as long as your enemies are afflicted with either Mark of Guilt or Felon's Imprint, which should realistically be all of the time. And then past that, he's just going to want attack on his kit because he hits pretty hard as it is, but you want him hitting as hard as physically possible. Okay, so now before we go into the actual should you pull portion of the video, let's talk about the event that comes alongside Vaan and Gabranth, and that's going to be the story chapter. And today we're going to be actually looking at the chaos portion of this so that I can recommend different characters and look at the chaos challenge for the things that you're going to be wanting to do in order to gain those burst tokens, those tickets, and all that good stuff. Now, the first wave on this is Death Riders. Now, Death Riders are very well known for lowering your max HP, hitting like AoE braveries, and really just hitting you generally very hard. Now, this particular fight, they are going to put up an aura that reduces max HP for everybody, so you're going to want to bring somebody along that can either heal efficiently or make sure that you're taking less damage. So Porum is ideal for something like this, and she's going to carry you over into the next wave as well when we get to the Avengers, which are absolute real pains when it comes to this particular fight. Now, as long as you're able to keep on top of the defenses of the Death Riders, they shouldn't cause as much of a problem as long as you're dealing a large amount of damage in a short space of time, because you don't want them soaking up all of your turns too quickly. The real problem when it comes to this fight is the actual boss of the fight, which are the Avengers. So, the first thing that these guys do is they have a debuff that goes through debuff immunity. So while Lena is a synergy character for this, you're still going to want to be very careful here. They put a debuff on your characters that is similar to Fujin's Razor Wind. So basically what that means is that anytime that character acts, they're going to be taking a bravery attack to the face from both the enemies if they're both targeting her, or him or her. It can provide a lot of problems. This is why Vaan is a synergy character, because obviously he refunds his bravery after most of his attacks, so therefore it doesn't cause as much of an issue for him. If you really wanted to, you could take along some sort of debuff cleanse, but honestly, the only character I can think of that can do that is Yuna, and she is not going to be strong enough to be able to actually fight the enemies. They also have a recast attack that is a pretty nasty brave HP attack, so 4 hit bravery, AoE, and then HP, but that's not the real problem here. The real problem here is that it's a mass dispel. So basically you're going to want to be able to get your buffs back as soon as physically possible after they've done this, and bear in mind there are 2 of them, so if they're like broken up in the turn order, which is very likely if you're using a character like Gabranth who has Rebreak or anything like that, you're going to need to be really careful about reapplying your buffs, and also just making sure that the debuffs are on them. The Death Riders in Wave 1 actually do put up an elude buff so that it's harder to inflict debuffs to them at certain points of the fight, so you're going to have to be careful when you're timing those. So really, it's actually a generally very nasty Chaos fight. They're also immune to lock, so tanks aren't going to work here. But there's a lot of things you have to keep in mind when going into this particular fight. In terms of characters you can use, HP Silence is your friend here. So if you have Arciela or Eldnash or Kefka, they are all going to work really nicely here. You just have to be careful when you use each of them. Like I said, that first wave does like to stop themselves from getting debuffed. The second wave will just like throw out attacks all the time if you're not careful. Arciela will at least be able to keep your bravery up, and she has healing in her kit. Eldnash will serve very, very well as your damage dealer, just by being able to keep that terror buff up. The warp actually works quite nicely, because even if they do break him, then you're able to act again straight after, so you're able to like gain some of that bravery back, or at least take the bravery away that they just gained. Saz will also work quite well here because of the buff extension, being able to apply buffs that are as strong as they are, just like that, and being able to just hit as often as possible. You can actually do a pretty good job of cheesing this fight as well if you have access to characters like Amiditelian and Kais, and if you have Gabranth or any other delay-based character. As long as you can deal with the first wave, during the second one, pull in a friend Amiditelian, because you should always be bringing Amiditelian for friends unless they're outright resisted, and then summon, just Crystal Idol, take away their next few turns, Mega Flare if you need to, just to get rid of more, and then you're pretty good to go. You can actually do a lot of cheesy things between Kais and Amiditelian, so basically you can choose to take the easy way out and just delay the heck out of them and make sure that they don't ever get a turn, or you can play the game the way the game wants you to play, and then just make sure you're really careful of that nasty debuff. Make sure you're really careful about reapplying your buffs. When it comes to the Chaos Challenge, honestly, if you don't have either Vaan or Gabranth, you're going to struggle. Lena is the synergy healer here, and she does well. She'll help out quite a lot because there's a lot of brave regens and HP regens, and the debuffs that come out of the enemies that aren't that nasty framed debuff that come from the Avengers will get warded off. But obviously with the Dispel happening as well, then you're just going to have to be extra careful. So if you're not going to go for Gabranth or Vaan, honestly, sometimes it's okay just to skip out on the Chaos Challenge. Not to say don't try with the character you have available, but don't waste loads of resources for the sake of one burst token. So now we come to the portion of the video that everybody's waiting for. Should you pull on Vaan's banners or Gabranth? Now, honestly, I would love to get Vaan. I would. I really like him. I think that he's got a really heavy damage dealing kit. I like the blind that's in his kit. I like the fact that he now has longevity that he's never really had before. And if you got a character that complements him well, like Shantotto, that gives him the Imperials that he needs, he hits really hard. And he's actually not a character to sniff at. And I do genuinely like Gabranth as well. He only has an EX, so if you're going to pull for Vaan, then luckily the one that has Gabranth also has his EX on it, so if you don't have Vaan's EX already and you want him, then that's going to be the best banner for you to go for. And then the banner mates that are on there, apart from Locke, he's sufficient as a healer for the Chaos Challenge if you already have him, but I wouldn't go pulling for him. And the other banner mates are just not ones that excite me in any particular way. So therefore, Mog tokens, I think, come into this quite a lot. If you have Mog tokens and you've bought the premium Mog pass to have 10 EX tokens, I would personally just get Gabranth and be done with it. Unless you have another use that you have planned for your Mog tokens. So basically, the only other reason I would take this is to go for a character that you already have the LD for, or if you want to save them so that, say, Noctis comes out you pull his LD but you don't have his EX, you can stop pulling. You can then grab his EX from that, and that way you can go about it differently. But if you don't have another use for your Mog tokens, then Gabranth is a great place to use them. That will help you to clear the Chaos Challenge, will help you to just have Gabranth ready for when his LD comes out, and then you kind of can just leave it alone. Vaan is not a character I would pity. I think that he's great, but I wouldn't pity him. With his burst without his LD is practically useless, if you ask me. His LD gives him those extra skill uses, and his burst basically is there to give him an extra use of his LD. That skill, the burst effect is nice, but it's not anything super crazy like we're going to see in future characters like Noctis, like Arden, like Lightning, like Kuja. There's a lot of characters that will take precedence over him. So if you wanted to to get Gabranth, then you wanted to save yourself time, I might throw a few tickets at it to try and save myself from using the Mog Pass, the Mog tokens. And if I get anything Vaan related, then I'll be really happy about it because I like him. But this is not a banner that I would go crazy on. And the last pointer I did want to make, actually, before saying anything, is that I very heavily recommend against pulling on any banner if you find that the only reason you're pulling on that banner is to finish a Chaos Challenge. Honestly, that one burst token is not worth it. If you're having to spend like however many tickets and gems that you are to have to get the character to be able to finish the Chaos Challenge, then surely you're only going to have to do that again next week when the next banner comes around. So if you have Vaan and he's going to carry you for the next 3 challenges, that's nice. It will obviously help you, but it's still not worth investing super heavily just to get hold of a couple of burst tokens. So that's going to be all for this video today. Thank you all very much for joining me. Let me know in the comments below if you plan to go all in on Vaan, if you're going in for Gabranth, if you're going to spend Mog tokens on Gabranth, or how you plan on pulling over the next few weeks. Don't forget to like the video, click that bell for notifications on any future DFFOO videos I might be making, and of course don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share the video out to others who might like it. I will be seeing you guys in the next few days because I'm actually going to be making some other videos that I'm hoping you guys are going to enjoy, and then obviously next week we're going to have Markina's LD coming up that we can have a look at as well. So like I said, that's going to be it from me. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Take care!